You gave my life to me, set me free, set me free. The finest years I ever
He's successfully got them really upset. The verse 34. To this they replied, "You were steeped in sin at birth. How dare you lecture us?" And they threw him out. Jesus heard that they had thrown him out. And when he found him, he said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" Here's this guy that Jesus has encountered, and the encounter has cost the guy something right now. He's like received a ton, but it has cost him something. And Jesus comes and finds him in that place of being thrown out. And I think that's beautiful.
Now he finally gets to see Jesus.
Hmm.
And that must have looked pretty good to him.
Yeah.
There's an interesting interplay between seeing and hearing, because Jesus says, the one that you believe in, you see him now. He's the one speaking to you. And so he'd heard already. Now he's seeing. And then this whole thing with speaking introduces the next segment about the voice of the good shepherd and the sheep hearing his voice. So it's a beautiful, we have five senses, and the focus sense is sight, but it's interplaying with the sense of hearing as well, and how those two things are connected. We hear things, and that leads to us seeing things, I guess.
Experiencing Jesus for this guy comes through not just one of those senses. And so might there actually be a connection for us and an invitation to lean into experiencing Jesus through a sense that we have yet experienced him. Do you believe in the Son of Man? Jesus is talking to the blind guy. Who is he, sir? The man asked. Tell me so that I may believe in him. Jesus said, you have now seen him. In fact, he is the one speaking with you. Then the man said, Lord, I believe. And he worshiped him.
I wonder what that looks like. Like he worshiped him. Does that mean he bowed down? Does it mean he just looked at him with adoration and like there was this channel opened of the divine love and power flowing into him, and him pouring himself back into Jesus? I just wonder what that means. He worshiped him.
I would point out that it's scandalous, right? Again, like to understanding a little bit the culture, like we're assuming that he's been influenced, I should say, by the religious and cultural forces of his day. And the last thing you do is worship another human being.
Yeah.
I think this is probably the first time we see this show up in John, right? This idea of worship associated to Jesus. For us, worshiping Jesus, like, well, of course, who else do we worship?
Yeah.
But right at this juncture, this is a major deviation, right? Because so far, the only proper worship has been in temple to Yahweh. And here we have a guy on the street worshiping Jesus.
I mean, yeah. Taking the knowledge, not just you're the Messiah, to the next step in pouring. And I think a lot of us, maybe that's a lot of us struggle from a mental assent to some truths to the next step of pouring our hearts out. And what is it that hinders us from worshiping? This guy, he seemed to be a very simple, plain-spoken person. The one time we see him elaborating is in his rebuke of the religious system, but there's something in his heart to where he's just ready to pour it into Jesus. And that seems to be the completion of this process for us of our interacting with Jesus. If it doesn't lead to that, then we haven't completed it yet.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, and it strikes me that there's three elements at play here. There's encounter, there's unity or connection, and there's transformation. And those three elements, like it's almost like those are the three elements that give birth to worship. It bubbles out of him because of those three things. Because those three things have occurred. Like, all right, again, like enough with the establishment. The establishment hasn't done this. Like this, that I've not experienced these through going and participating in the animal sacrifice in the temple system. This has occurred in my life because I ran into this guy, right? And out of that, I'm going to worship this guy.
We look foolish to a lot of people, shamelessly laying ourselves down in worship, and it's a vulnerable thing where we're willing to give up looking like a strong, independent person. Worship is just such a countercultural thing to do.
In 38, then the man said, Lord, I believe, and he worshiped him. Jesus said, for judgment I have come into the world, so that the blind will see, and those who see will become blind. Some Pharisees that were there with him heard him say, who were there with him, heard him say this and asked, what? Are we blind too? Jesus said, if you were blind, you would not be guilty of sin. But now that you claim you can see, your guilt remains. So that seems like another place where the first shall be last and the last shall be first is a lived reality as the world engages Jesus, right? Like the people that have been first, the religious elite, the people that have the answers. And it seems like that's what Jesus is saying in that last verse. It's like, look, if you really were blind, you wouldn't be guilty. But the fact of the matter is somehow it's almost like they've chosen blindness, right?
It's the giant flip-flop. The story begins with sin is the reason this guy's blind, and it ends with you guys are actually the blind people, and in this case it is because of sin.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Wow.
I would give everything I own just to have you back again, just to touch you once again.